Hello, I'm CarterCalc or Alfie, and today we're going to be doing completing the square to find the turning point, or in this instance the minimum point of this equation. Okay, so what you want to do first when completing the square, especially when x has a coefficient, which in this instance is 4, you want to factorize out the 4 of the equation. So you're going to have 4, and then because we're factorizing, you're going to have a bracket of x squared, because what you're doing here is you're saying 4x squared divided by 4, which is x squared, 8x divided by 4, and minus 18 divided by 4. So that's plus 2x, and I'm just going to keep it as a fraction, so we're going to have 18 over 4. You can just leave it as in the decimal form, it's up to you, but I prefer using fractions. So now we're going to be completing the square for the inner term, the term inside the bracket, so I'm going to write out 4, and then now what you want to do is you want to put two brackets first of all, and then x plus or minus half of this value. So for us here it is 2, so half of 2 is plus 1. If it was minus 2 it'd be minus 1, if it was minus 8 it'd be minus 4. So it's 8 is x, and then whatever your half of the second x term is, and we're going to square that. It's very important that you square that. Also what we're going to be doing here is minusing whatever this number is squared, so 1 squared. Okay, hopefully you can see that. The reason we do that is because what you're doing here when you have x plus 1 squared, is x plus 1 times x plus 1. What you're going to get is x squared plus 2x plus 1, because 1 times 1, and as you can see we have x squared plus 2x, which is what we've got up here, but we don't want the plus 1, because that would ruin our minus 18 over 4. That's why we've taken away the 1 squared. The reason why the 1 is squared is, let's say if it was x plus 2, it would be and times by x plus 2, you'd have what, x squared plus 4x, and then you'd have 2 times 2, so it'd be plus 4. As you can see, that's 2 squared, so likewise as 1 is 1 squared. Sorry, hopefully you can understand that. And then we're just going to minus the 18 over 4 still, okay, equals 0. So we pull this down, and all we've done here is minus 1 squared and put this into a bracket. Okay, just to remind you, so you have x plus the half of whatever term is here squared, make sure that's squared, and then minus the number in the bracket squared there. Okay, so now we're just going to try and simplify this. So we're going to have 4 x plus 1 bracket squared. These two, the x plus 1 bracket squared, is going to stay consistent throughout your whole equation. Okay, so once you've got that, it should never change, you never touch it essentially. And then we're going to have, I keep saying essentially, minus 1 squared and minus 18 over 4, so we're just going to try and simplify that. So what minus 1 squared, or is essentially minus 1, it's the same. What we want to do is, because we're subtracting these numbers, we want to make them both into a fraction. So minus 4 over 4, 4 over 4 is equal to 1, because it's 4 divided by 4, which is obviously 1. Hopefully you know that. Otherwise you're in the wrong place. That's not very kind. Anyway, so that's what you've got. These are the same thing, and then you're going to have some minus 18 over 4. Close the bracket, now equals 0. And now we're going to go to the next line. We're going to have x plus 1, 2 squared, minus 22 over 4. Okay, now this is the part that can get tricky. So what we have here is that the x plus 1 stays, x plus 1 squared stays, never touch it. But it's this. So what this is that the minus 22 over 4 is still dictated by this 4. It is still, this 4 is still locked, it's locked it in basically. These brackets are like cages, and it's locked in under the 4's command, right? It's a bit of an abstract way of looking at it, but it will make sense. So what you want to do, to free this minus 22 over 4, you have to multiply it by the 4. Like, let's say you have 4 and it's got a 2 in its cage. If you want to release the 2 from the cage, you do 4 times 2, so you multiply them and then you get 8. And you can see that these two are clearly equal. So what you want to do here is you want to times this by the 4 on the outside of the bracket to release it. Okay, so what we're going to have there is x plus 1 squared. You see how it's never changed, it just doesn't change at all. But now that now we've only got one set of brackets because we've released it when we multiply these two together. Okay, so we're going to times that by that, and you're going to see that we get minus 22 because it's 4 times something divided by 4. So the divided by 4 is cancelled out by the times 4. Okay, hope you can understand that. It's like saying minus 22 divided by 4 times 4. It's just going to get cancelled out. Okay, so that's just minus 22, and now you've got it in your complete the square form. 4x plus 1 squared minus 22, and now I'm going to show you how to find the minimum point. So that was, what was that? 4x plus 1 squared minus 22 equals 0. Very important. You can say y equals. Okay, so now to find the minimum point, this is very important. I'm going to put it in a box, a rectangle, an oblong more specifically, and you want to find the x value is the negative of this, okay, of your x value, and the y is equal to the y value, to your minus 22. So for this instance, the minimum point will be when it's the minus of what's in the bracket, it's the negative of the 1. So in this instance, the minimum point will be x equals minus 1. So yes, plus 1 here, so it's going to be minus 1, and then y equals minus 22. Now I'm going to prove to you why it's that way. This is quite important. It's kind of high level. It just helps you to understand. This is all you need to get the full marks, but I'm just going to show you to make you understand it basically. So to find the minimum point, you're finding the smallest value this whole equation could be, right? And the way to look at it is that because this x plus 1 is squared, no matter what value you put in here, so let's say x is 10, it's going to be 10 plus 1 squared. It says minus 10, it's going to be minus 9 squared, and that's going to be 81. So any number minus squared equals plus, plus squared equals plus, so it's always going to be positive. So whatever value you put in here for x, this is going to be a positive number. So when you minus 22, it's going to be large basically. Whereas if you make this bracket equal to 0, so we have 4 minus 1, as we see from here, instead of x plus 1 squared, you're going to see that that's 0 squared times 4. And as we know, 0 times anything is 0. So then it's just going to be 0 minus 22 equals minus 22, which is your y for the minimum point. You see how the y value equals that. And that's the reason it's your minimum point. It's because it makes the bracket 0 when it's the opposite. So therefore, this part of the equation is 0. I can show that in one other way. So we have 4x plus 1 squared equals 0. You'll see that when you divide it by 4, and you still have x plus 1 squared, it still equals 0. When you root it, 0, square root of 0 is 0, so x plus 1 equals 0. So therefore x equals minus 1 when you solve it. Okay, x equals minus 1. I hope you enjoyed this video. Shout out to Big Loops! Sorry, he asked me for that. And yeah, good luck in whatever exam you are doing.